like, oh, this like my third time trying to make this video. The first two times was basically like, like rehearsal. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what that was. So you know what I'm saying? Like this is third time the charm. You know what I'm saying? This third time the charm. So yeah, we gonna get it right this time. You know what I mean? You know, I need to be a little bit more lax. You know what I'm saying? As far as like how I'm approaching this stuff, I'm taking it a little too serious, man. But I also just need to speak up, and make sure people can hear me. Make sure y'all can hear me. So this is the third time that we trying this. You know what I'm saying? Third time. But this is apparently gonna be my first YouTube video. You know, I should give like a brief introduction or synopsis of what I want to do on this channel, and it's not it's pretty simple. You know, it's just like it seems simple to me at least. You know, I'm gonna be talking about a lot of outside the box, non-mainstream concepts and ideas, philosophy, you know, um, outside the box things. You know, that's the best way I can describe it, because you know, whatever's inside the box is whatever's in this reality, basically, obviously. But I pretty much want to just talk about, you know, outside the box things like ghosts, spirits, demons, gods, reality, physics, quantum physics. You know, I only use those things like as a reference, so you know certain type of intellectuals can really get where I'm coming from. But yeah, I want to talk about a lot of deep concepts about life, philosophy, and discovery. You know what I mean? And how any Joe Schmo can do these things and reveal the secrets of the universe. You know what I'm saying? Okay, but so today's topic is about the black hole sun. So when I say black hole sun, like, you know, what do I mean? I mean this: the sun is a black hole. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. You know what I'm saying? The sun is a black hole. How does that make any remote sense at all? Well, it goes back to thinking outside the box. You know, there's many surface level information about these types of things. So when you think about black holes, there's information out there about what a black hole is, you know, um, and based off that information, you can discover deeper aspects of what the black hole, like what's role it serves, like universally, you know, stuff like that, you know, like once again, bro, distractions. But like I said before, in the last attempts, when you doing something that's very personal, and creative distractions pop up out of nowhere. You know what I'm saying? And where I live currently is not my home, and it's a home full of people, and you already know how distracting that can be. So, um, let's continue to try this again. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I was talking about black holes. Black holes. So, you know, from mainstream perspective, a black hole is basically a hole that's created. Well, it's a celestial object that's created from the implosion of a star. So when a star dies, it can turn into many different things, and one of those things is a black hole. You know what I'm saying? So like, you know, off rip, that sound like it's already alluding to what I'm talking about, which the sun is a black hole. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, like I said, when a star explodes, it can turn into many different things. It can turn into this thing called a quasar, pulsar. You know, it's a couple other things. I just can't remember them. But you know, most of the time they turn into black holes. So when a star explodes, it turns into a black hole. And you know, apparently a black hole, when you're near one, you know, its gravitational pull is so big that nothing, not even light, can escape it. So, you know, it's a hole that sucks in all forms of matter, even light. You know what I mean? And if you've seen any interesting like explanations on YouTube or something about it, you know, they'll tell you that like when you get sucked in, like you get like spaghettified. You know, you turn to a noodle. Like you turn into a noodle, bruh. That's kind of crazy. I ain't gonna lie. I need to keep my phone like up here. Yeah, there you go. That's a little better. I need to keep it up like right here. But you get spaghettified. And like when you get spaghettified, you know, what that tells me is basically you turn into a very small bit cubic of matter. You know what I'm saying? So like, you know, you got black holes, right? You know what I mean? So in my mind, with the things that I'm aware of, which is the fact that the life we live in is a dualistic system, you know, off rip, I'm like, okay, so if there's a black hole, there's a white hole. You know what I'm saying? Now, I've heard of white holes before, but it was literally just something that was mentioned in like a documentary or something. Like, it was mentioned that like, oh, there's theories that white holes exist. So I'm just like, really? Interesting. Interesting. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I became aware of white holes in general. And that was even a thing. I thought it was just black holes. But you know, like I said, when you become aware that this life is dualistic, you know what I mean? It is a realm of polarity, which basically means everything that exists has its polar opposite. You know, everything in existence has its polar opposite. Meaning, like, you know, a few examples: male, female, black, white, you know, red, blue, up, down, hot, cold. You know what I mean? Just A to Z. That's a polar opposite. You know, like Everything that exists has its polar opposite. Sun and the moon, those are polar opposites. You know what I'm saying? And why is that? Like, why is reality set up in that way? It's because, you know, you need a system to exchange energy. You know what I'm saying? Between these two things. You know what I'm saying? Because the motion of the energy that's being exchanged is what's generating the power behind the whole system. You know what I'm saying? So like it's used to create balance. You know what I'm saying? Because without the polar opposite, you know, the system is unbalanced. You know, and it's not going to be able to sustain itself. You know what I mean? To sustain a proper system, you know, you need something opposing to exchange the energy with. So like I said, having awareness that we live in the realm of polarity lets you know that, okay, if there's a black hole, then there's a white hole. If there's a black hole, there's a white hole. Now, since I know that, now I gotta ask myself, you know, when things go in the black hole, where does it go? You know what I'm saying? So like intrinsically, a black hole sucks things in. So like a white hole spits things out. You know? Without anybody having to explain this to me, I can just figure that out on my own. This is how you break things down in reality and discover stuff. This is literally how you discover things and start delving in the realm of philosophy, as by observing reality and using correlation, you know what I'm saying, based off of what you know and what you can observe, and thinking outside the box. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? But to really do this stuff, you have to be aware of a lot of things. Like, you have to be aware of a lot of information. You know what I'm saying? Because all that information are pieces to the puzzle. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, this is how I figure this stuff out without looking it up on the internet. You know what I'm saying? I was simply aware of black holes and white holes and the fact that this realm is a realm of polarity. So I was able to tie these things together. You know what I'm saying? You know? So like from a mainstream perspective, they only want you to be aware of the black holes. You know what I'm saying? They obviously don't talk about the white holes at all. And when I looked it up, you know, the only person who talked about it was Einstein. Yeah, like he's the one that came up with the theory of a white hole. You know what I'm saying? And basically, his synopsis of what purpose it serves is the same thing that I figured out. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just like, wow. Like, I literally just discovered that on my own. You know what I'm saying? Just like this philosopher. You know what I'm saying? But we put these people on a pedestal like they're so smart and better than us. But, you know, we all live in the same realm together. We all able to see the same things and interpret all this information as individuals. You know what I'm saying? The difference is the level of awareness. You know what I'm saying? That's the difference. You know what I mean? I feel like what makes you smart is how aware you are. You know what I'm saying? That's what really makes somebody smart. Because without awareness, you know, you're ignorant to a lot of things. They can help you make sense of something you are aware of. You know what I'm saying? So it does you justice to be aware of as much as you can. That's why they say knowledge is power. You know what I'm saying? That's why they say that, because it's literally You know, you gain power from being aware. You know, and you can't be knowledgeable if you're not aware. You know, you can't be smart if you're not aware. So, you know, another way for me to let people know that like what I'm saying is true. You know, like I said, when it comes to philosophy and discovery, that's all through observation. You know what I'm saying? Um, one cool metaphor, or I guess it's a metaphor, because I don't really know the difference between most of this stuff. I just know this is a way of speaking universally. So, dang, I forgot what I was about to say. Dang, I should have meditated before I did this, man. I should have meditated. It's okay though. I will get it. I will remember. I don't remember. Dang. This is when I look at my notes. Okay. Pause. Okay. I remember what I was going to say. I was going to say the truth is hidden in plain sight. The truth is hidden in plain sight. So, you know, when you look up in the sky, what do you see? You know, I see a bright luminescent object that's, you know, people say that you'll go blind if you stare at it. You know what I mean? But, you know, if you know a thing, you know, if you're into outside of the box type of things, and you know that like sun gazing is, you know, an ancient practice, you know, and if you really know what the sun is doing, you know, like which everybody should be aware of, it's just like their perspective on it is just very mundane. Um, you know, the sun, like I said, is a white hole. It's a black hole, but right now it's a white hole. You know what I'm saying? So like, you know, they make white holes seem like it's some theoretical like, you know, thing that may not exist, but you have plenty of examples of that in the sky at night and during the day. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the most obvious example I could think of. You know what I mean? And then, you know, at nighttime, there's a whole bunch of them. When you look up in the sky, white holes everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, you know, but they'll sit here and make it seem like it's something that go beyond your comprehension that you can't figure out just because, you know, you're not the scientist. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, everybody's a scientist. I feel like. You know what I mean? Everybody's a philosopher. Why? Because we all got the power to observe and become aware. You know? It's annoying when I have stuff on my face. It is what it is. But, you know, the sun is in its white hole phase. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, like I said earlier, when it's about time for it to die, you know, it loses that outer shell, which we're gonna go into more a little bit later. But like when that outer shell dies, you know, the inner core is exposed, which is a black hole. It's a black hole, man. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, what further proves what I'm talking about, you know what I'm saying, is, you know, when you learn about what the luminescent part of the sun actually is, you know? So, I learned something new the other day, or like last week, which is still ongoing right now. and it's actually about to pick up again a lot more. Um, so the sun. Okay, let me explain this first. So the Earth has an atmosphere, and the purpose of the atmosphere is to protect us from, you know, the sun, you know, or anything and out in space that can, affect the Earth. It's like a shield, you know. You got the atmosphere, and then you got the I think it's the magnetosphere, or you basically got Earth's magnetic field that also shields us, and that extends out way further than the atmosphere. But you know, as above, so below. Our bodies have the same types of things. You know, it's called an aura. You know, and we also have a magnetic field. You know, and when we were in a period where we had to stand like what was it, 6 feet away from each other and stuff like that. Yeah, like that was because they didn't want you to be close. Because when you get close to, when two objects of mass come together, they naturally just start exchanging energies with each other, just inherently, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's a little insight on why. Well, people know why that happened, but you know, for those who don't know, so the sun has a black hole in the middle of it, and it's in its white hole phase. You know what I mean? Where it externalizes the things that it's externalizing information from another dimension. It's basically what it's doing. Because, when you look at a black hole, it sucks in matter. You know what I'm saying? And, matter ain't nothing but energy. Light is information. You know what I mean? So, you know, the black hole is intrinsically connected to a white hole. You know what I mean? Because, like, when you look at a black hole, it basically is a hole punched in the fabric of space. So it's literally punching through the fabric of our dimension, and seemingly like a doorway to another. You know what I'm saying? And like naturally, that hole is gonna have another side. You know? You know what I mean? So it's a way of transporting stuff, things, matter. You know what I'm saying? It's a way to transport this stuff across the universe. You know what I'm saying? Or across all realms. You know what I'm saying? So that's what the sun is doing. You know what I mean? That's why sun gazing is a thing. You know what I'm saying? Because you're absorbing information, you know what I mean, from another dimension. You know what I mean? You gotta look at all this stuff as like where we're at from perspective. They call it the 3D. We're in the third dimension. You know what I'm saying? But when you start going up in outer space or even the ocean, you're going into higher and lower dimensions. And like they are all just separated by density. You know what I'm saying? So that's why they call it the 3D, the third dimension, third density. Like this is where all this stuff comes from. You know what I mean? So that's why I speak in the way I do. That's why I'm explaining this stuff the way I do. So like, another way to prove that like the sun is a black hole or has a black hole in the middle of it is like the outer shell of the sun is called the corona. It's called the corona. That's what it's called. Actually, it got a different name, but like I think corona is one of them. But you know, the sun, the outer shell, is basically like a gaseous layer, you know what I mean, of charged particles, from the nuclear activity of the core of the sun. So what surfaces is like gas and magnetic field lines. You know what I'm saying? And if you know anything about solar flares, you know, they'll tell you that like, oh, a solar flare is when, one of these magnetic field lines that, when you look at the magnetic field line, it's basically like a line of magnetic electrical energy that comes out of the inner parts of the sun, comes out and circles right back in. So it's like a big loop, And when those loops snap, they call solar flares, The energy from that snap causes a solar flare, you know. And like I said, we have the atmosphere, so the Earth is bombarded by solar winds because that's what the sun is doing right now. It's externalizing, the information that's contained within it. It's externalizing it onto the Earth or onto everything in the solar system, basically. But this is what's happening. So, like I said, you got the surface, the corona, and the surface is made of this gaseous layer of charged particles and magnetic fields. Sometimes the energy that's being distributed across the surface, it gets really deformed, is one way to describe it. Comes like deformed. That's what creates sunspots, and it also creates these things called coronal holes. You know what I'm saying? So, wherever these holes are, these are less dense areas of the sun, and it basically exposes the interior. You know what I mean? And when you look at these things, they look black. They look like black spots. You know what I'm saying? So like, recently, like what's going on today, we've been going through a whole lot of solar, geomagnetic solar weather, and when we have solar flares or these coronal holes are created, you know what I mean? The Earth is bombarded with solar winds, and when these things happen, it causes natural disasters. You know what I'm saying? Earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, all that stuff happens because of the volatility of the sun. So, especially when the coronal holes happen. When the coronal holes happen, like, it's even worse than a solar flare. So, we currently are going through this right now. You know what I mean? And recently, we had the earthquake in Thailand, you know. Where I'm at currently, I'm noticing I live in an area of the country where, there's tornadoes and stuff. And, the other day we had a really crazy storm that was very short, but it knocked a whole bunch of stuff down, So I'm basically seeing examples where I'm at of how that stuff is affecting where I'm at. You know what I'm saying? And I'm in America. So, every single time this stuff happens, it causes a lot of turbulence on the earth. But if you know a thing, in essence, everything is energy. So like, not only does this stuff display itself through natural events, but it also happens, through smaller forms of life, like, politics, the stock market, stuff like that. You know what I mean? It happens in all areas of life because it's energy, Ugh. It's just energy. So, gotta make sure I'm still on topic. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think I said pretty much all I want to say. I just want to enlighten people on the black hole sun. You know what I mean? And if you didn't know about coronal holes, now you do. Go look it up. White holes are a thing as well. You know what I mean? The sun is in its white hole phase. Any star in the sky is a white hole. Don't let these people make you think otherwise. You know what I'm saying? I'm making this video specifically to enlighten people on how to observe and discover things for yourself. You know what I mean? So when, mainstream consensus makes it seem like they're making some new discovery, you can actually be right there understanding exactly what they're talking about, not knowing exactly all the details, because they basically just discovering something that you can discover for yourself. They are doing nothing but what's the word, like over saturating it with more complex layers of information. That's all they doing, more details. You know what I'm saying? But you can understand these things from a simplistic level, because that's how the universe works. You know what I mean? Like I said, polar opposites. You know what I mean? Dualism. You know what I mean? That's what this life is all about. You know what I mean? That's how the universe is structured. So it's going to apply in all dimensions of life. You know what I mean? I'm definitely going to make more videos going in more detail about that stuff, on how you can measure everything in existence. You know what I mean? We got plenty of measuring tools. That's truth hidden in plain sight. Like, you don't need a whole bunch of technology. You just need to be aware of what you're surrounded by. That's all you need to do. That's really all you need to do.